We're in the midst of an ongoing security and humanitarian crisis at our southwest border. In March alone, CBP apprehended and encountered over 103,000 migrants crossing without legal status, the most in 1 month for over a decade. On April 16th, we had almost 5,000 people cross the border without authorization in a single day. Simply put, the system is full, and we are well beyond our capacity.
All right, that's Acting Homeland Security Secretary Kevin McAleenan testifying on Capitol Hill today, urging members of Congress to fix the ongoing immigration crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border. McAleenan laid out President Trump's plan to curb the flow of migrants, which topped 100,000 illegal crossings in the month of March. Now, according to the acting DHS chief, Trump's proposal requests $523 million to provide better care for detained migrants, $5 billion in funds for 200 miles of new border wall. It also calls for thousands of extra Border Patrol and ICE agents to help fight against human traffickers and drug smugglers. Well, today's hearing comes after President Trump introduced new changes to how the U.S. will deal with asylum seekers. In a memo last night, President Trump ordered the DOJ and DHS to develop policies that would settle asylum claims within 180 days of those claims being filed. Under the new proposal, both asylum applicants and work permit applications would require a fee. Also, migrants who have entered the U.S. illegally will not receive work authorization before their asylum protection is granted. The DOJ and the DHS have been given 90 days to develop the proposals in more detail, which are sure to be challenged in federal court. Will the new asylum rules make the U.S. safer and also help solve the border crisis? Joining us now to discuss this, once again, Robin Biro. Also now with us, Senior Fellow at the London Center for Policy Research and former Marine Gunnery Sergeant Jessie Jane Duff. All right, Jessie Jane, you take a look at what McAleenan laid out today and the proposals from the White House. It's hard to deny that there is some sort of, perverse incentive that's driving these people to come here in record numbers. These policy proposals seem like common sense ways to at least start to deal with that, motivation for bringing these people here. Why do you think Democrats are going to challenge them in court?
Well, anything to derail this administration and embarrass it is probably the goals of the opposition to President Trump. We've also haven't had a very strong establishment within the Republican Party to support him. We obviously flushed away 2 years of House control. So when we look at a lot of this, you're right, you have to wonder, because some of these things are very much no-brainer policies. Why would somebody be granted a work release program, granted to authority to work in the United States when they haven't even had their hearing yet? Why are we allowing these hearings to go as long as 8 years? It's really ridiculous. We've enabled a system where people have come into this country and continually lived off of the American taxpayers' backs and often gotten paid under the table doing work. We have to make sure that we are ensuring that we do the E-Verify and force that, because often employers that don't use that or utilize that are paying under the table to illegals. And if you shut down the employment, a lot of the incentive to come here will be stopped. But many employers aren't held accountable for that process. And if you don't hold the employers accountable, if you don't hold the American public accountable for hiring illegals, then you're going to obviously still have this workforce flow coming in.
Right.
I agree with you. Some of these policies are no-brainers, but they just can't seem to get anything out of that House.
Robin, there is no such thing, I guess, as a no-brainer when it comes to the Democrats taking a look at the Republican proposals to dealing with immigration. But, these seem like very simple and straightforward steps, an honest attempt from the Trump administration to try and deal with this problem, or at least start a conversation on this problem. Do you think, as with so many other of these immigration policies in the past, this is going to be challenged in the Ninth Circuit Court and then, get bogged down again?
I'm honest to a fault here, so this will be no different. I think that there will be challenges here, and it makes me cringe because we saw this for at least 6 years of Obama's administration when Mitch McConnell said that he would go to any effort to block anything that Obama tried to push through. It seems like we're getting a little bit of tit for tat now with my party doing some of the same for this president, and we've become what we really loathed for so long, and it's driving me crazy. As Jessie Jane said, some of these really ought to be no-brainers. With 100,000 people coming through every month, we are only able to process 50 a day with our current levels. So what the president's proposing to do is to speed this process up and impose some fees. My party is making some claims that I can stand behind, that seeking asylum is an international right and something that's provided by United States law, and therefore not a privilege that someone should pay for, is what my side of the aisle is saying. So I'd like to know exactly how much those proposed fees are. But with the rest of the reforms, I think my party needs to stand up and pay attention, because we keep talking about comprehensive immigration reform, and we've got to bring something to the table or we're going to lose the House in 2020.
I think in a spirit of the law situation, I think a lot of people agree with that situation. You know, asylum is an important part of our laws in this country. We need to have asylum for legitimate asylum seekers. But who's going to pay for all the additional judges and, legal professionals that have to deal with these cases? If these folks coming across the border can pay thousands of dollars to coyotes, I don't think it's too much to ask them to pay a little extra to help process all these additional asylum claims that we're seeing in this country. Now, Jesse, President Trump is using this immigration crisis as a cornerstone talking point for the 2020 election. We'd expect that. It served him well in 2016. He tweeted this: "If the Democrats don't give us the votes to change our weak, ineffective, and dangerous election laws, immigration laws, we must fight hard on these issues in the 2020 election." Now, you take a look at the situation here. I asked Robin in the previous segment about this infrastructure deal. Seems like kind of pie in the sky, but there's no way, a snowball's chance in some warmer climate, that they're going to get any kind of infrastructure done, Jessie Jane, without the items we talked about that President Trump wants on border security, the money for the wall, and the rest.
He didn't get elected on infrastructure.
Right.
That's really it, bottom line. He
and
got
nobody
elected
ever
on
does.
this illegal immigration. Exactly. It's a great talking point, but most people, look what happened with President Obama, the shovel-ready jobs. What happened to those? I'm tired of politicians talking about spending more money and giving a fancy name to it. Let's call it infrastructure. Let's call it shovel-ready jobs. Let's trade your car in cash for clunkers. All of those have been dead-end deals that have not brought productivity back into the American people's economy, our economy, or into our wallets, so to speak. They cost us a lot of money. And if you're going to talk about tax cuts and then turn around and talk about spending tax dollars, you better have a better neat and tidy plan that tells me how it's going to get paid for. You're 100% right. He got elected on illegal immigration. This is his cornerstone. This is his one thing. And if he can't move this and get this going before 2020, he's at serious risk, because, again, it'll look like all talk, no action. And plenty of Ann Coulters out there have gone after him with daggers on this issue. And that has not been helpful to him. He's got to show that he's making movement on this. Yeah, this is not an election only anymore. He's got to govern as well, and that's the challenge here. Very difficult situation, but President Trump is fighting hard on this. And Jessie Jane and Robert are going to stick around. Welcome back to NewsMax Now. Did you hear about the turmoil at the National Rifle Association over the past weekend? The group's new president, Oliver North, says he will not seek a second term. Now, this comes amid allegations of financial misconduct, and it's drawn the attention of New York State investigators who are now probing the group's compliance with nonprofit rules. President Trump, of course, weighing in on Twitter just days after taking the stage to address the NRA convention in Indianapolis, saying, quote, "The NRA is under siege by New York Governor Andrew Cuomo and the New York State AG, who are illegally using the state's legal apparatus to take down and destroy this very important organization." President Trump went on to say the NRA must get its act together quickly, stop the internal fighting, and get back to greatness fast. Here's how Governor Cuomo responded today.
The president's accusation that it's a politically motivated is all garbage. We don't do that in New York State.
No, it never happens in New York State. Still with us, Jessie Jane Duff and Robin Byro. Jesse, first to you, you were at the NRA meetings in Indianapolis over the weekend. Tell us what's really going on here.
I wish I could tell you exactly what's going on. The board tried to circle the wagons during the membership meeting and go into executive session. Mind you, it is one of the largest meetings that goes on Saturday morning, and it was crowded with thousands of people. Roughly about 2,000 members had attended this particular meeting. They wanted to go into executive session, and of course that was shut down by the members. They had an open mic that was allowed where members were able to voice their opinions. Many of them were infuriated because apparently Colonel Oliver North, the president of the NRA, had departed prior to the meeting and left for Washington, D.C. the night prior, as reported by Stephen Gergowski with the Free Beacon. And what I was very infuriated with was we didn't hear from him. It gave me the impression that they were trying to hide what was happening, that he had basically told Wayne LaPierre that he had records of the mismanagement, he had records of this, and he needed to resign and retire and support him to become president. And apparently Wayne felt that he was was being extorted and pushed back. I don't know who's right or wrong in this particular situation, but I will tell you that the board was not open with it, and they reinforced that Wayne LaPierre was going nowhere, and they put another vice president in charge of being the president. Long story short, it sounds like the old guard is still in charge.
And I think what's concerning, and this is what President Trump alluded to in that tweet, this is the organization that's been out there on the forefront, defending the Second Amendment. This at the time when you've got serious gun control legislation moving through Congress, not that it's ever going to get past the president's desk, but also in different cities around the country, in different states around the country, they're implementing their own gun control laws. And I think that's what makes this so concerning for advocates and of the Second and gun owners, Jessie Jane, is that it doesn't seem like the National Rifle Association has its house in order at a time when it really needs to.
Well, absolutely. Members are very upset right now because we don't know exactly what's going on. And all we do know is that our president had resigned without even being able to finish out another year. He'd barely been on board for a year, yet this financial dealings that they have with this outside group called Ackerman McQueen has gone on for decades.
Right.
And what's very upsetting to me is that they had a no confidence vote that was presented to the board, and apparently it was shelved in Wayne LaPierre. So I'm sitting back here stunned. I know that there's this problem going on up in New York State, and now I'm thinking, how are you going to resolve this? Because if everybody has been feeding from the same tank of money,
right,
maybe they're all trying to protect each other, but that's not going to be able to. You can't hide that. You can't hide that from the Attorney General.
Well, I want to go back to that interview with Governor Cuomo this morning. Take a listen to what he said, though, about the NRA and its role in American society.
I believe the NRA is counterproductive not just to the people of this country, but also for legal gun owners. I don't think they serve gun owners well. They haven't been constructive. They have been a destructive force in this country for everyone involved.
Robin, do you agree with Governor Cuomo there?
No, I was sighing, probably audio. You could probably hear me sighing during that. Let me just say, this weekend, I was actually in Pittsburgh, where you mentioned the cities that are enacting their own laws. I was there to speak at an event for veterans to address the gun grab that they had, where they just outlawed certain assault rifles and weapon magazines. And look, Jessie Jane and I are both vets. So this was a bipartisan meeting to address a law that is unconstitutional. The NRA did step up and filed 2 lawsuits about this issue, where the only point that I can agree with where the kind of looking into their finances is that the NRA seems to me, the perception from my party is that they seem to be representing the interests more of Glock, Smith & Wesson, Remington, Beretta, and Springfield than they do for American gun owners. So, I think that might be something worth looking into and might be worth looking into their finances. I just want them to get back to doing their core mission of representing these gun owners.
Yeah, and there are other organizations out there, the Second Amendment Foundation and the Concealed Carry Permit Association. There are other groups out there. So, it's an interesting issue. Jessie, Robin,